Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. Good to be back after 6 months. Happy New Year. It seems like 6 months. I've been in agony, and unfortunately, in this day of legal drugs, I can't get anything good. So, in lieu of good drugs, I'm going to go with the bad ones. Speaking of drugs, I'd like to introduce, starting on my right, Kevin Marks. Kevin, what kind of drugs do you take?
I tend not to take drugs. I tend to...
Aspirin? You don't? How about ibuprofen?
No, not so much. Even when I got a cold, I tend just to sit here and drink tea and stuff. So
Miserable it out?
yeah.
Okay. To his right, stage left and stage right are meaningless in this environment. Coming to us from Lost Wages, Nevada, Robert Scoble.
What's up?
How's CES going?
I'm tired. I just walked the entire show floor, and
Still
I'm
couldn't
beat.
find anything, right?
No, you know what? There's very, very little that's groundbreaking. I mean, there's lots of tablets, lots of copies of iPads, but nothing really that's makes me go whoa. Lots of 3D TVs.
All right, well, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Joining us from the great city of New York, the infamous John Borthwick. Welcome, John.
Hi, Steve.
Thanks for joining us. And as always, joining us from his leadline enterprise crypt is John Taschek of CloudBlog and Salesforce.
Hello, Steve and everyone.
Welcome all. So let's go back to Scoble and hear more about what isn't happening in Las Vegas.
Well, there's lots of tablets.
What does that mean?
If you walk the hall, you see tablets everywhere. There's Asus tablets, and there's RIM has a tablet. Motorola is the one that everybody all the journalists at least seem to like the best, and that's running the next version of the Android OS. What else did I see? But everybody's waiting for iPad 2, and we're all wondering what HP is doing. And HP announced that they're doing a press conference on February 9th, where they're going to bring out a tablet as well.
Yeah, and you're not wondering because they told you, right?
Well, yeah, but I haven't seen it. Gotta get your fingers on it and see how good it is and why you would buy that instead of an iPad.
John Borthwick, have you ever been to CES?
I have. I went years ago. Yeah, I've been a few times.
And what was it? What was it like to you? I mean, is it? Have you been to Comdex as well? Since that's another dead.
The dead conference.
Yeah.
I went to Comdex a long time ago. I mean, CES when I went it was the era of who's got the biggest screen. So there's a period of maybe 3-4 years where each year it was just bigger screens, and so that was the last time I was.
Interesting. We're having some bandwidth issues with you, I'm afraid, but we'll make do. Taschek, when was the last time you were there?
About 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and it was had not rebuilt its its brand after it had gone down a little bit, and it was an all right show, but there was whole sections of CES that were paired off to laptop bag manufacturers and things like that, and so I said, well, I'm not that interested in this kind of thing, and gadgets weren't cool then either. It was before even the iPhone.
And Kevin.
I went to CES once years ago when I was at Apple, but not since.
You mean back when Apple went to CES?
Yeah. Well, no, it was more to go and see what other people were up to. I think I went there to go and see what Microsoft were doing with fonts at the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't. The last time I was at CES was a couple of years ago, I think, and it was. I think I was there for the last Bill Gates pre-keynote, which was pretty pathetic. And then we got into this string of bomber keynotes, and I didn't watch the video of it, but from all reports, or at least from the one report that I actually could get through, it sounded awful. Were you there, Robert?
I wasn't there, but I heard the same things from the journalists I had dinner with last night. But they never announced anything at those keynotes. Even last year, I mean, they sort of hinted at Windows Phone 7 coming out, and they sort of hinted at the Kinect coming out, which are their two big announcements in the last half of last year. But they don't announce things at CES. They don't wait for CES or time things with CES anymore.
Well, nobody waits. That's that when Apple dumped what was it, WWDC? What was the January? It was a Macworld when they basically disconnected from Macworld. That was kind of the end. I mean, I remember when Robert, you and I were at the Blog House a few years ago. That we were all. I mean, it was wall to wall people watching Steve Jobs on video. It was the sort of the two conferences trading off against each other. But then once Apple got into this release environment where they basically created their own events and didn't tie them to anything except their own internal idea of what they wanted to accomplish, I think that was the end of Comdex and, well, of CES.
Yeah, at least as a news event, the attendance is way up this year, though, which shows that CES is still a place to come and network with people in the industry. I mean, I've seen VC CEOs. There still is. It still is a dealer show too. I mean, that's why a lot of bag guys are there, right? Because they're all trying to get the latest accessories to put in stores. But
what is the attendance there?
140,000 or something. I mean, it's crazy. The taxi lines are an hour long. I almost didn't get back for Gillmor Gang. It's just packed.
John,
you'll see. I'm going to put up a video. Bree Pettis and I walked through the entire show. It took 30 minutes for us basically to walk from one end of the show to the other end, and it's just packed with people. And like I went to the RIM booth and it was like 5 deep around the tablets, and so you have to wait there for 10 minutes before people get out of your way just to get to touch it.
Did you say something, John Borthwick?
I didn't. I said wow at one point.
Oh.
Said wow. 140,000 people is a lot of people to go see a bunch of hardware with no new announcements.
Well, I wouldn't say there's no new announcements. It's just that the news value of it is pretty low. If Motorola is the hottest thing, selling an Android tablet, let's be honest, it's a copy of the iPad, and does it have any innovation? Does it bring something radically new? Like Microsoft Kinect, for instance, brought something radically new to the industry, and they didn't announce that at CES. They announced, they shipped that, right before Christmas. So CES isn't a news event anymore, although there's a lot of journalists here.
Well, there's a lot of news. It's just in the cracks between the non-announcements, it seems to me.
Yeah. Well, if you're a hardware guy, there's a lot. You have to be here. If you're in Engadget makes its whole quarter on this show. They have 30 people here, and most of their journalists are writing something like 30 stories each. So 30 times 30 is a lot of stories. But a lot of them are lame. It's like
what's the number one, or the breaking stories on TechMeme today? Are any of them about CES?
Let me look. Hold on just a second. No, Verizon iPhone. That's not CES. That's coming. Mac App Store, not CES. Apple CEO, not CES. Facebook versus Google, not CES. Sony PlayStation Phone, okay, that's sort of CES. Apple goes after parity, not CES. CES Intel Executive, Microsoft's tablet OS too long in coming.
Okay, all right. So it's Apple meme, not tech meme.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's the Apple Store that they launched yesterday was the noise on there. Yeah.
All right, so the news that I see coming out of a Bomber's speech is pretty big. I think it's basically that Bomber's capitulated to the Windows Group.
Yeah, well, he had a interview with Wired Magazine covered it on a video, where they said they're going to Windows everywhere, Windows on every platform, one version of Windows that's going to run on every different architecture. It reminds me of back in 1995 or whatever when Windows NT was supposed to go and do that. And run on MIPS and Alpha chips and everywhere else, and now it's tablets, slates, iPad clones, and of course PCs, refrigerators. I don't know whatever it's going to run on. It's going to be one version of Windows. I don't think they're going to be able to pull that off.
John Borthwick, in all of your companies and all of your investments and startups, what is the number one platform that you target in terms of your day-to-day work?
Number one platform. How do you define a platform?
Well, all right. I'll give you the answer, and then we can reverse engineer the question. The answer is Apple.
The answer is Apple?
Yes. The iPod and the iPad and the iPhone is the answer.
Okay, now that's the
Interesting. The answer is the web, Steve.
No, that's not the answer either.
Is not the web.
No, it's Steve. I don't think that's right. I think that there's when I was thinking more of the social platforms, but Apple's clearly a platform out there. It's certainly not Windows. But I think that a phenomenon that we've seen on the desktop in the last year is Chrome's become a huge part of the desktop experience.
I agree with that.
Nobody talks about the desktop anymore because we all want to talk about tablets and we want to talk about mobile and we want to talk about all the new exciting things which are happening. So the desktop kind of feels boring, but it's I think that there's new stuff happening on the desktop, and then I think specifically on the Apple platform, I think that you're starting to see some really interesting things come out with HTML5 and. I was playing around earlier this week with a couple of apps that people have written, including somebody here over the holiday wrote a little HTML5 app, which was targeted for the iPhone, but it obviously works on all platforms. And it's still early days, but I think you're starting to see the responsiveness of those apps and the ability to access the accelerometer and location and all of those things in the device is beginning to get there. And that stuff, I think we're going to see a lot of that in 2011.
Right. So basically, to translate, the Apple has commandeered WebKit and basically neutralized the difference between it and the WebKit Android platform. So that is the dominant platform now, and everything else comes in behind it. I mean, I agree with you about Chrome. I'm using this Rock Smash or whatever it's called. And on my desktop, and every few days they have this update, which of course breaks everything. So I'm reluctant to actually turn the computer off or close the program for fear that it will be updated into oblivion. But once it stabilizes, I'm looking for it. I'm looking for gestures to be able to simulate and emulate what I've figured out on the iPad and to some extent the iPhone. So, I think that the dominant platform is the iPad.
Yeah.
It's interesting talking to the Audi CEO. We didn't talk about Android. We talked about how Apple's changing, what the car buying customer, at least his car buying customer, which is a luxury brand, is expecting. And he talks about iPads and iPhones.
Well, this is partly because the cars have a really slow cycle, right? If you're developing stuff for the car, the cars all have little iPad docks.
We were talking
one at a time.
And we were talking theoretically, and he knows the Apple customer is the high-end customer. It's the same thing I hear from Sephora. I just saw the CTO of eBay, and he still says iPhone users buy more stuff than the Android users. It's still the same story. Android is selling more units, but it's not the high-end customer.
That's what I'm saying. No, what I'm saying, you missed the point. What I'm saying about the car.
But it's naughty guy.
Can I finish, Robert? The point about the car industry is they have a very long innovation cycle, right? So the cars they're shipping now, they were planning a while back, and they've put little iPhone docks in them that you can't even plug an iPad into without some kind of adapter cable because they're shaped for something little rather than something big. And they've they haven't really grokked the sort of the Android stuff yet because that's ramped up much sooner. Actually, but we're going to see them start to get this and start to build dockable Android things that sit in the car precisely because the Android is actually really good at nav and stuff like that.
It replaces.
First of all, they're not using hardwired things for iPhones and iPads anymore. They're all Bluetooth. But I'm talking about how they talk. These guys, the engineers, talk about iPads. They talk that language. They all have iPhones and iPads. They don't have Androids. They're high-end people. They care about style and design. And they know that their customer, the high-end customer, is buying mostly Apple products right now. And the Apple product is what's driving this entire industry. Everything is copying Apple. I mean, all the tablets I've seen are like a copy of Apple.
Yeah, I was joking about that earlier. I've got the sort of random Chinese knockoffs here that look like iPads but are actually the wrong size. But
okay, well,
but the people are copying Apple. But that's the thing is that there's this explosion of Android devices that is filling out all the niches. Apple ships one or two
filling out
things
all what niches? I don't
all kinds of weird random niches that you're not expecting.
Well, I heard from John Borthwick that the basic what he's focusing on is the rapid growth of Chrome on the desktop and the growth of HTML5 on the mobile platform, right? I don't hear him talking about Android at all, except as an after effect of the HTML5 work that's being done.
So, Steve, let me jump in there. So a couple of thoughts. First of all, is the lines between the Chrome platform and the Android platform, I think are gray at best. And hopefully we'll see some clarity in, this year from Google on where one begins and the other one ends, etc. As the tablets roll into market. So second thing is that on strict Android, phone-based Android, one of our companies, TweetDeck, pushed out their Android version in early December. And in the space of 6 weeks, they have as many users on that every day as they do on Windows.
Exactly. So they're competing with Windows, not the iPod. I mean, the Apple products. The Apple products are driving the market, as Robert says, and Android is in a war which they're winning to destroy Microsoft for number 2.
Or Nokia, or RIM, or
I mean whoever. I mean.
Yep, I buy that.
Okay, so the thing that the big question, one of the things that has been classic in the software business for many years is somebody basically pre-announcing something, which keeps all the people who are about to pull the trigger on the second level of fast following. And they basically say, well, I don't need to buy that because this new iPad is going to be amazing. Whether it's amazing or not, it kills the aftermarket for the competition. And Apple is always, it has been for a long time, and I don't see any signs that it's going to change, has always been in the position of being ahead of the pack in terms of innovation.
Well, but you can only do that when it's not going to cannibalize your own product. They're not going to say, "Oh, we've got this shiny new iPad" before you can actually buy the thing, because then they'll stop buying the current iPad.
No,
so
I mean,
Apple is smarter than that.
Actually, Kevin, the strategy is that they will announce something. There are some rumors to the effect that they're going to announce something in the first week in February, something like that, and it will work on stage. It will work. It won't be like the first iPhone, which had this long cord reaching back to the computer. I'm still wondering how people actually, how do they spool that cord out when they're on the highway? And and then 3 months later, it will ship. But in that 3-month window, they kill everybody else.
But they can do that if it's a genuinely new thing. But if it isn't, they will kill their own cells as well, and they can't take a
How is that going to kill? How is the iPad going to get killed?
If they say, here's a shiny new iPad, you can have it in 3 months, then no one will buy any iPads in the Apple Store for 3 months.
But we all know the iPad 2 is coming. I mean, they had cases here, and Apple, by the way, forced the case manufacturers to pull the cases off the shelf. We saw cases here. Everybody knows the iPad 2 is coming. So.
Both my kids got iPads for Christmas. I mean, the good news is that their grandparents, they don't know anything about this at all. I mean, in fact, their grandfather actually said, well, isn't there going to be a new iPad? And I said, sure, in July. Right? So that's 6 months. Divide 6 into 600 or whatever 700, something like that. It's $100 a month to actually be in the real world. I think that Apple plays this market, like Stradivarius.
No, they do definitely. But that means we won't hear about anything until it's ready.
Yes, John?
So a couple of questions, since you want to dig into Apple, a couple of things that I'm intrigued with. The first is that you've touched on this, I think, on previous gangs, but I'd love to talk about it a little bit more, is the prevalence of the AirPlay button that you're starting to see on all of these products.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, so that you can basically just flip it onto a screen, and it only appears when there's, on the network, there's other AirPlay-enabled devices. So that, I think, is fascinating. And then the second is I noticed this morning, with yesterday's update, when they pushed out the Mac Store, there was also an update to iWork and to iPhoto. And I noticed in iPhoto you're starting to really get some cloud-based services which are appearing there. Mm. And so I may have missed it in the previous update of iPhoto, but I think it's new, which is on the left-hand side in the folders, you've now got web-based services. So if you've enabled Flickr or MobileMe as a web-based storage device for your photos, it's there. And how Apple, we talk about streaming, when we talk about the new server farm as being just a streaming farm, but all these cloud-based services I think are starting to appear, whether it's local cloud or whether it's cloud.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're going to find much support for the concept of local cloud on this show, but
cloud.
That's for the benefit of our sales force.
Well, but to some extent, Apple's had that for 12 years. The way iDisk works, it's built into the OS and mirroring to the servers is there and it works, but you have to pay for it at the moment.
That's why I've never paid for it until they started to give away that. My iPad fell out of my computer bag in the back seat, which is all black, so I didn't notice it when I got out of the car, and I got all the way down to Embarcadero and used my free subscription to the Where's My iPad stupid service. Yes. And it was right back at the BART station where it fell out. It's fantastic. So that's a free service. So I think to John's point, or maybe it's not his point, but I'll steal it, which is that AirPlay, the Apple TV has sold over 1 million of these things. Now, what's selling Apple TV? I'll tell you what it is. It's AirPlay. AirPlay is why people are buying that thing. It's $100, which means that it's a third or a quarter of Google TV, which if you go down to a Best Buy and if you want to have a fun time, go down and ask the salesman what Google TV is good for, because they don't have any idea, and they didn't sell any of them either. So, $100 for a cloud service, which is what AirPlay is. AirPlay is you get it down via the Apple strategy to the machine, and then you go over to, you turn on Apple TV, and all of a sudden you start to see, over the past week, you see these movies that are showing up streaming only. You know, the biggest problem with Apple TV is that the content cartel is locking up and trying to forestall Netflix and all of these, streaming services until they can figure out how to get, not completely destroy their margins on their product. But
yeah, I think, Steve, I think that the AirPlay thing is also, it's fascinating in the generic sense. It's not only just for video, in that if you've got, some speakers that are hooked up to an Airport Express and you're on the same Wi-Fi network and you're looking at or listening to music on your iPad or listening to a podcast on your iPad, you can just with one click transfer it
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've been, for 100 years, I have stayed away for various reasons from getting a new stereo. And I finally got a stereo as part of this, as a freebie from Amazon, for getting this huge screen, Sony thing, and they threw in the surround sound stuff, which, among other things, has got a subwoofer, and it's better than the audio that I use here, which is basically a computer-aided audio assist. It's pretty good though because it's got a subwoofer on the floor, and the way that I mix this show is to basically do what Al Green used to do, which is to mix everything into the room. So I don't have earphones. I'm hearing you the way it's coming off those speakers. So that's the beginning of this kind of environment, and you're going to see that starting to move over with the Connect, starting to interact with people, not just in terms of face recognition, but also audio recognition and the kinds of audio hints that we are going to start to use, which is, laughter. What does that mean? They can start to track games based on the emotional reaction to them, and then pipe that to the network and bring in other people doing that. That's going to be huge. So the other point I wanted to just reinforce about the AirPlay point is iPhone 4 is really marketed on the back of FaceTime, which is, again, a web service. It's a streaming service over the network through their servers, and the first.
It's actually going through their service, but
what?
It's not actually going. It's point to point with a setup through their service.
Yeah, but my point is that they've disintermediated the carriers.
Yeah.
Okay. They've developed a service which, for all intents and purposes, you have this device which we think of as being this closed system, and it's open across nationalities. And I'm having a meeting after the show. I can do it on Skype, or I could do it with a FaceTime. I'll figure it out at the time. That environment, as they start to build out services that talk to FaceTime, and Skype's new iPhone capability brings that to 3G, which means that it won't be long before Apple pushes it to 3G as well, because the differentiation isn't there, and their hardware products are now being sold not primarily but significantly and growing on the basis of streaming services. That's a pretty powerful transition, and and basically what they're doing is they're using a razor blade strategy, which is we'll sell you the thing for $100, and then over time, as we put the hurt on the cartel, we'll get more content and we'll bring it to you, and eventually, the fact that there's no hard drive on this machine is not going to be a problem. It's going to be an asset. Taschek, what do you think?
I want to give you a negative gesture on the conversation.
No, you've already done that, so that's why I'm asking you. You have to talk.
I agree with you. Apple sets up the. Let me go back to one point rather than try to boil the ocean as you just accomplished. The point about the video and sensing what you're going to be doing on when you're interacting with an application, I mean, that seems a little pie in the sky now. Like if you're going to be playing a game, they're looking and they're monitoring you, what you're saying, I think is that they're going to be able to tell by your gestures whether you like the game or not.
No, it's going to raise your point score. When I watched my daughter dancing with the Kinect, and she nails it. The little robot on the screen is going perfect, fantastic. You got it. Those kinds of things. At the end, it comes up and says, you are amazing, and it gives you a high point score. Which, if that high point score, I mean, if people are going to pass playlists around, they're going to pass high point score lists and graphs of how you're doing and who's interesting. Who do you want to play?
But if you're looking at a phone, I mean, if you're looking at just a phone, and the video of your face, it's not going to be able to take the gestures. I mean, I'm sure Kevin has I mean, not to focus on Kevin, but I'm sure he has a different reaction to when he's doing something on an iPhone than you do or I do. I mean,
but if you take a look at the full range of emotions on Kevin's face, what looks on somebody else's face looks to be like boredom. For him, it's extreme alarm and excitement. There are certain
the facial expressions are common. That's very true.
Yeah, but I just don't think it's. I mean, who cares? I don't want something following my face around when I'm interacting with the device. I just think that I'd much rather do something that's that helps me accomplish tasks rather than going down the entertainment. I know that entertainment's a huge part of the iPhone, iPad, and iPod success. I mean, it's just not what I'm interested in so much. I'd much rather have something focus on customer success or in the enterprise world. So I'm thinking about this in terms of
those are two, as we well know, those are two sides of the same coin.
Well, so I'm trying to take your line of thinking into the customer service experience. And if you're calling on an iPhone,
but here's where the Apple is not measuring up. I mean, a lot of executives show me their iPads and they carry them around, but then they walk into a conference room and they can't project with the thing. They can't use Prezi. They can't use PowerPoint. They can't use and the new Motorola has an HDMI port, and that's and it runs Flash, and that's very attractive to me.
Yeah, well,
You're
yes,
dreaming.
Almost.
I'm sorry, I love Prezi, dude, and that's a Flash-based thing, and it would be awesome on a tablet.
Yeah, it would be.
I'm sure that's going to come.
Yeah,
they'll probably have an
HDMI5 once you get it off the Flash.
I know they're working on an HTML5 version, but it's not out yet, and the first iPad has no real good way to project it.
Except AirPlay.
Just talking about the iPad. Whenever I go to a conference room,
how many conference rooms at Salesforce have AirPlay compatible devices on them?
I can't tell you.
Yeah, none. I've been in these Salesforce conference rooms.
You haven't been in a Salesforce conference room in a while.
Yeah, not in a while.
I don't know. The funniest thing is when everyone brings in their iPads, sets them on their desk, and they they're saying, "I've got an iPad. I'm cool. I'm hip. And then they try to type some notes, and they give up after about 4 seconds. I mean. But
we'll conduct a little experiment in a month, and we'll see how many people can tell which of my posts on TechCrunch were written on the iPad and which were written on a so-called computer. You won't be able to tell the difference.
That's you.
It doesn't take a lot of rocket science to figure out how to use that device. I go out the door. I need a new crown. Half of my teeth that are still left are now falling apart, and so I have to walk out the door to go over to the dentist. I take the iPad. My Office is with me. You cannot beat that.
No, I agree on that.
Okay, and I'm not going to buy the Motorola box or whatever it's called.
The box.
Zoom.
The which?
Zoom. I mean,
Zoom.
Zoom with an X.
Exactly. Esther, dropping the vowel.com. Flickr, no E. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so John, I get your point, John. John.
Which John?
T. John T. John Borthwick.
Yeah.
The first thing about AirPlay, I thought that was great. What was the second one?
What was the second one? It was the cloud-based stuff we talked about. So the new Apple server farm and, some of these cloud-based services that are beginning to pop up in iPhoto, and, it was that, which I think you touched on.
All right, so give us a snapshot on the state of social.
State of social. So, so a couple of things. I think that we're starting to see, in 2010, we certainly saw the growth of what I think of as these sort of vertical instances of social. Let me back up a second. Is that I think that there's a thread which exists in the in the tech blogosphere, which underlies a lot of the conversations about social, which is, will there be one monolithic platform or will there be many? And it relates to everything from standards to identity to will Facebook go public? And I think that one of the things we saw happen in 2010, which I think we're going to see a lot more of in 2011, is we started to see these use cases of social that applied to very specific workflows. And my own belief is that a single monolithic platform is not going to be able to cater to all of the intricate workflows that social actually opens up. And so when I'm to throw some services around this, I think that you saw clearly that the Foursquare guys and the Gowalla guys, did great things in local. I think you saw the Quora guys, the FormSpring guys, starting to do really good things in Q&A. So Quora and
Quora I understand.
FormSpring, do you know FormSpring?
No, that's why I said who.
Yeah, so FormSpring, amazing growth there in 2010. It's a very lightweight Quora-like. Well, it's not really a Quora-like experience. It's a Q&A experience, but it's very lightweight.
And hasn't the growth stalled lately?
I think that it has. I think that it doesn't mean, Robert, I don't mean to say that all these things are going to be successful. I just mean from Quora to FormSpring to Foursquare to Instagram, what we're seeing is we're seeing specific use cases of social that really make sense for users and that are either bootstrapping on top of the existing social platforms or building their own social graphs. So, to answer Steve's question, one big thing I think we're going to see more of in social in 2011 is this sort of fragmentation into specific use cases. And so, so that's one. The second thing is that we've, at betaworks, and I've been thinking quite a bit about something which I refer to as network media, which is really this idea that, when we started out at betaworks 3 years ago, we thought that that social would change the way people found stuff online. That is certainly happening. And discovery and navigation is being mediated by social. But what I think is happening now, which I certainly didn't expect 3 years ago, is that the experience of a web page and what happens when you get to a web page is actually changing because of the social interactions that happen when people get there. And this concept of a page becoming what I call networked for a small window of time, for a couple of hours usually, where there's a large social engagement which happens on the page, and it becomes part of whether it's either an existing social platform like Twitter or whether it's just on the discussion boards, it becomes deeply enmeshed in this social experience for a short amount of time. And so as web pages become social, I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of innovation and new stuff that's going to happen there. So publishers are trying to figure out what that means. Commerce sites are trying to figure out what that means. Blogs are trying to figure out what that means. And I think that web pages are actually changing because of social. And search did not do that, right? Search certainly changed the underpinnings of a web page and, the tags. But most web pages did not change because they were found via search.
Okay, John Taschek,
well,
I
disagree. Actually, I think one of the problems we got with the web is that so many of the web pages have changed primarily to be found by search. We've got all these. The web is sort of has this malaise of all these robot-generated pages that are just there to suck in search results and build the advertising loop. And part of the reason the social is attractive is that we're trying to segment off the pieces that aren't this sort of machine-generated content for machines to give back to you.
Right, I agree 100%, Kevin. The point I was making was that an existing web page, your blog, people finding it via search, the essence of that page wasn't changed by people finding it by search. There's a ton of content farming, domain parking, and crappy pages that were created just to be optimized around that discovery process of search.
Right.
But I'm saying the existing pages, they didn't act the experience of them. Take a traditional media page like a New York Times page. That did not change significantly with the advent of search. And yet with the advent of social, you see if you look at a Huffington Post page today, or if you look at The Onion, or if you look at these sites, these content sites that are deeply engaged in social, is that the pages are becoming these sort of live events, these where for a period of time, there's almost a jam session that happens on the page, and you can feel it.
I completely agree with that. That the mechanical search, there was just actually a story that came out about Google search results and how they're not matching up with. They're too mechanical, basically. But I think actually Google's much better than it used to be about engaging in the social stream, and because of the real-time searches and things. And, Danny Sullivan, if here on the show, he could talk about that with.
He'll be on next time, but I believe I saw a tweet on his part that suggested that that Google may be having problems, but so is Bing. So everybody's having this problem.
Yeah, it's difficult, and that's why the streams are so important, and following the people that you know. So I think most of the news feeds now are, almost a huge percentage, almost 30% of links into news feeds are now coming through Twitter, and then another just behind it is Facebook, and it's below that is now through Google, through Google, assuming search and their other properties, and that just makes so much sense because you don't want to follow an entire publication, or you don't want to, or you don't know what to search for. You want to discover it, and you want to discover it by following the people that you think are knowledgeable about a subject, and that just brings up the whole concept of the activity stream and engaging with more and more people. And I know, Steve, you wrote that piece a couple weeks ago about the @mention technology. I think that's an amazing concept, and that because it brings other people into that you can engage with, and then it opens up their world to you. So I think I've already stopped searching as much as I used to, and now almost everything I get is through an activity stream.
John Borthwick, what do you think about the concept of @mentions and their potential momentum?
I think that the @mention has become a standard that you're seeing all over web pages, or obviously in Twitter streams, but also on comment boards, and so I think that Facebook has driven identity into the web with a very sort of explicit strategy of connect and driving it through the sites. I think that the @mention has been much more organic, but I think that you're seeing it become a proxy for identity, and it's sort of the common handle that makes sense. It's the handle which I think in my world makes most sense, and things revolve around.
Yeah,
I say that carefully, my world, because I think that there's hundreds of millions of people who clearly see that around Facebook, right? And so I think that.
But you do see on Facebook, for example, people using the Twitter @mention syntax.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what their username is on Facebook, which in fact is usually their name.
Right.
But that's often leakage from Twitter, right?
It's not just leakage. It's conscious. I mean, I know that Chatter threads use that as standard syntax. And eventually, I'm sure we'll see these, normalization servers that basically take that issue away.
And Instagram and Quora are using the @reply in their own systems. Quora actually converts it to a username, and Instagram actually shows in your feed whether somebody @replied you and warns you that somebody's talking about you on their photos or something.
Yeah, I'm working on a post for CloudBlog and TechCrunch about I've tried to sort of stay out of this RSS is dead thing, because anybody who says that is absolutely out of their mind. And so I keep about to ship it, and then Dave Weiner writes yet something more interesting about this. So, I'm embargoing it at the moment.
He unfollowed me, so I don't know what he's talking about anymore.
Oh my God. That's one of the signs of the apocalypse,
Talk about playing with @replies.
2012 is happening in 2011. But
I mean, but the other thing is, if you look at StatusNet, they've already got the app mapping stuff working, so that if you @ someone on StatusNet, it'll bridge it through to a Twitter app when they relay it to Twitter. So they've actually got the identity bridging working there.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant by normalization servers. Yeah. But not to joke about the situation with RSS, but I think that John Borthwick kind of hit on it in the first thing that he said about @mentions, which is that it's a new standard, and as such, I mean, the biggest problem that RSS has had in terms of making this transition is, like Gmail and Google Reader, it doesn't really have a social architecture, and it isn't focused around the social signals. Now you can bolt that on as I mean, first of all, PubSub, Hubbub, and RSS Cloud, significantly real-timed RSS for the most part. But it did nothing about this particular issue, and as I think John Taschek is pointing out, we don't have time to try and hunt and peck through the RSS cloud for our information. It has to come from the citations of our peers, and that's what we do. And as a result, we've got this. The rapid notification system is now based on a system which, however ad hoc it might have been at the beginning, is rapidly becoming the core architecture for notification of new information, and that is a big deal. So. Is that all we're going to say about this?
What about ad bridging, or there's the PubSub Hubbub bit is the bit that makes it real time. If you like, the salmon bit is the bit that makes it propagate, and that bit hasn't been as widely implemented yet. So what we've got at the moment is a bunch of ad hoc stuff gluing things together, and
I mean, text propagates. Text doesn't depend on any of these standards organizations or ad hoc strategies. It already is propagating. People do this because they've built a pardon the expression, brand on Twitter, and they don't want to have to build up a channel conflict with another mention. So it already is the standard.
Yeah. some extent. Yeah, I mean, well, and there's this sort of, this is a weird thing that we've got these little bits of text that are shipped around, and then there's this sort of giant bundle of metadata that's wrapped around them that we don't see. The Twitter API now, for every tiny tweet, will give you 3 pages of stuff that's metadata around it that flows in too. So,
Okay. So what?
So yeah, the challenge is not, the constraint of what can we type into 140 characters isn't the issue, because they're shipping
It never has been. I mean, the guy in the center of our screen has Bitly. Bitly. Right. I mean, what is the percentage of URL shortens that Bitly owns at the moment, approximately?
So Bitly's about 65.
65% of those signals, which are essentially, if you unpack it, pardon the expression, are taking something longer or something more verbose, like a blog post, and packing it into a smaller trigger, and also establishing an analytics engine around the usage of that object. And he's got 65% of that. That's pretty amazing.
Also, another amazing figure is that we did the count last week, but there were in 2010 there were 60 billion Bitly links that were clicked on through the year, which is a lot of links.
Yeah, and at CES they had a whole day on social media where they were talking to hundreds of people. Some really interesting companies like Procter & Gamble were in the audience, and Bitly was used as the way to measure ROI or engagement. How many clicks are you getting?
Yeah. No, it's certainly. I mean, we had a good year. We have about 7,000 people who are now using the white label service, and so you're including many brands like. I'm not sure if P&G is, but similar to P&G, and a lot of publications and a lot of individuals who want their own branded short URL. So that plus the analytics plus the sort of data stack around links is the core of what's being built out of Bitly.
So there's an interesting kind of not necessarily intuitive to the media after effect of Twitter taking back the shortening URL infrastructure. It doesn't seem to have hurt you. If anything, it seems to have built your data stack, as you call it, into something that expands across multiple domains, not just Twitter.
That's correct. I mean, we did, at the outset, we worked with Twitter and we were the default URL shortener. But once we started working with Twitter, we started, fairly shortly thereafter working with other people and expanding beyond. And so, Bitly's the links for, a lot of the social networks out there today. It provides the short links for. We were talking about Formspring earlier. We were talking about Foursquare. We were talking about a lot of gaming sites, so on. So Bitly is expanded beyond Twitter. We still have a lot of activity on Twitter, and so Twitter has certainly rolled out their own analytics services and their own platform. But Bitly is and the white label uses of Bitly are certainly huge on Twitter.
Yeah, and any time, Twitter becomes an accelerant for Bitly because it's carrying. This is my point about this whole @mention fingerprint. I like it when they laugh. That means I'm right. You realize. You got it, Robert. There's this thing called a cough switch.
I was nodding.
It was a yawn switch.
That was a great cut, Tina.
It was awesome.
Okay.
You're talking about technology picking up social gestures.
Yeah, right.
Yes, if it connects, sees when you're yawning, changes the channel.
He's got an excuse. He's been at CES walking that floor for 3 days now. And
No,
didn't
I
you
thought
drive
he
there,
was-
Robert? Didn't you drive to CES?
Yeah, we drove it, and it took 9 hours to drive here.
Oh, wow.
Lucky you.
Then you got to drive back?
Yeah,
right.
leaving in the morning.
All right, so were you yawning about my at-mentioned scenario or just general fatigue?
General fatigue, but I think I was getting tired about the whole at-mention thing.
Why?
You know, I've been walking my ass off all day long.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
So you're saying this doesn't meet the Scoble save Rackspace test? This is something that...
Scobenomics.
It's not the same as talking about iPad 2s or something.
Oh, okay. Well, what about iPad 2?
It has 2 cameras.
Okay, we're going to go around the table, and then we're going to wrap this up. We'll start with Scoble. What about iPad 2?
It has 2 cameras.
Yeah.
And a sharper screen. It'll look like a lot like the Motorola. Only it'll have an Apple logo on the back. No, seriously. We're all waiting to see what Apple does to stay.
Are we really?
Yeah, I am.
I'm waiting for more movies to come in. I'm waiting for Netflix to start turning the tables on the cartel and start saying to them, "Oh, well, if you're going to do that, you know."
Well, we
haven't seen the other shoe drop with Netflix.
You know, I was walking through the hall with Bree Pettis, who makes this robot, and we walked by an optical storage company. Somebody
is that your mic that's scratching?
It could be. There's a coffee maker in the background.
No, that's better. Go ahead. You were walking with Reed
Pettis.
So
Bree Pettis, and we saw this optical storage thing, and it's like, why does anybody need more storage at home? That's over. I want more Netflix. You know.
Yeah, but the cartel doesn't want you to have more Netflix.
No, but it's just an argument. It's a war over price, right? So somebody else, Netflix will charge me $100 a month and give me everything I want, and they'll hand over 95 of it to the cartel, and Netflix will still make a shitload of money.
Do you agree with that, John?
Me, John. Taschek?
Yes.
Me, John. I think in the long run, that's where we get to. But I think in the short term, you know, in the next year or two, we're going to have a lot of there's going to be a lot of back and forth with the cartel, as you put it. I mean, I think that the Netflix streaming, it's amazing how fast. It's not a surprise. I don't think anybody either probably listening to this call or on this call, but it's amazing how fast the adoption happened. I think to most outsiders, and the cartel, I think, were amazed by it. And it's, you know, most of it's predicated on that Stars deal. And the Stars deal, I believe, you know, I used to know this stuff in the old days when I was at Time Warner, but I think the Stars deal was a 18 months or 2-year deal that was for $25 million. Mm-hmm. And that is up in March or April of this year. It's up sometime this year. And, you know, people are saying on the cartel side that, you know, they're going to have to pay 10x that for the Stars flow. And so I think
but so what? To Robert's point, 10x, so what?
Well, I think
$80 a month instead of $8.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody can offer me sports is the last bastion of TV, right? That's the only reason we keep our cable boxes, because everything else you can get on BitTorrent or on Netflix or on somewhere else. And then movies. So we want first-rate movies. We don't want to wait 6 months for movies.
Look, I agree, but I just think it's going to take time. I mean, you talk and we talk, you know, with glowing praise about the architecture and the price point of the new Apple TV box, the $100 box that you were talking about, Steve. But what we don't is we gloss over the fact that, you know, if you got two of those boxes, the old Apple TV and the new Apple TV, the old Apple TV had downloads on it. The new one has just streaming. And on the new one, there's a whole ton of content which you can't get because it's not available in streaming mode.
Yeah, but it's available on the other part of that box.
What do you mean? It's available on? You mean?
Sure, you just pay for it. You pay for it by the drink. You go up to, I mean, the screen. Netflix is in the middle. You know, on the right says, you know, it's basically preferences. The next one, I forget what it is. Then there's Netflix, YouTube, stacked as a bunch of services. The next one is TV shows, and the next one is movies. And those movies and TV shows, you pay for them by the drink.
Right, but my point is that if you have an old Apple TV, the old Apple TV offered download as well. And there's a bunch of deals that Apple had with the cartel which were for download only and not for streaming.
That's right, and they still work.
But
they still work. They work on. You can do that on the iPad, which is we're in season 2 now of Mad Men.
Look, this will happen.
It goes right up to AirPlay. It's already happened.
I'm not too worried. I mean, John, remember a year ago we didn't. I didn't use Netflix the way I do today, and the iPad wasn't out a year ago. I mean, a year from now, this whole thing is going to be solved.
Okay, I want it to be so. I don't believe the year from now it's all solved because of exactly what Steve said. Because I think the cartel, as you put it, are going to come back and are going to ask for 100x. And Netflix is a public company. They're not funded to do that. And it's going to be, I think we're going to see, it's going to be very choppy in terms of what we see in terms of access of content over these pay-per-view.
But hang on a sec, John. First of all, Apple is now in the game. Netflix on the Apple TV is a big deal for Apple. Correct. Apple is ABC. So already one of the cigarette manufacturers is on their side, if you follow the analogy.
Right.
Okay. Secondly, the so-called download thing, AirPlay, erases this cataclysmic ability of what you refer to, me referring to as the cartel. They remove that as an issue because it's available already for a price. If I want to see Mad Men, I'm not going to find that on Netflix ever because they're making too much money off of it on DVDs and off of these on-demand deals with Comcast, et cetera, et cetera.
You see it there eventually. They've got older TV series. You know, they've got stuff that's in syndication on there. But yeah, you're right. They're phasing it.
And Steve,
but this is the place where Apple has got it sort of sewn up both ways because
right.
They will sell you the thing directly. If you buy the Blu-ray, they have the digital copy that you put into iTunes. So I've got Inception on my phone now because I Blu-ray for it, which I can't get through any other means yet. So Apple has sort of actually done a really good job of tying that stuff up and making that work well.
And so do all the Blu-ray manufacturers because they all support Netflix. My point to John particularly is there's already enough momentum for a number of major companies to get hurt by them going to 100x. That won't happen, I don't think. Yeah. 10x, absolutely. And can the market support 10x? Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with the 10x. So let's see how it plays out this year. I would love this to be so. I just seen it, for a long time, and I think that maybe it's maybe I got too cynical from spending some time over at the cartel. But I think that this stuff is.
At dinner, I had dinner with one of the Sony guys and some other cartel members. I think what you're not recognizing is they're all getting iPads, and they're all wanting to watch movies too. And so they're looking at how do they, take advantage of this new world that is evolving right in front of us.
I mean, that's what AirPlay is to me. I mean, I've got an AirPlay in the bedroom. I just bought another one for the new screen. And you sit there, and you lose the remote because it's about the size of a nail cutter. I lose it every 10, 15 minutes. You go over to your iPhone, and you turn remote on, which is an app, and you're back in business. In fact, you can do searches on Netflix, which means it's a whole lot easier to do that. I never have to go to the computer anymore for Netflix. This is disrupting and obliterating my concern. If I want to, we're out in the living room and we get tired, we pause it on there, we go into the bedroom, hit the other Apple TV, and it's up there.
Right.
We don't have to wait. We don't have to listen to AT&T talk about whatever that service is that allows you to see your downloads in multiple TVs. Done. We're living in the future. It's what, and as the remotes situation gets abstracted into one remote, where you can, as you can do now with Comcast, you can switch channels on your main TV on Comcast with a free download on the iPhone or the iPad. The iPad's going to become, your entertainment system. And to your point about music, it's already going to happen. Have I agreed with you sufficiently yet?
I think we all agree. I'm arguing about the web of contracts, not the technology, right? And so I think it's so. Steve,
that's going to be the sticking point as they cycle around that again. And that's the piece that Apple has done well in the past, because they've been very good at those sets of negotiations between James.
They're a lot better right now. Go ahead, John.
So, Steve, while I have you, so a request, a gift from you I'd like to ask for in 2011, and this is very much counter to what we just been discussing, but I would love to get a version of, get the Gillmor Gang back available via audio-only podcast.
Why is that?
Because, I love...
Can we have a moment where we don't say anything at all? No, let's just take 30 seconds. I mean, Craig Ferguson does this. What is it? Painful, what does he call it?
Well, we could do it in
uncomfortable. Just bear with me, and then I'll answer your question. Okay, 30 seconds. Yeah. Here's your RSS right here, pal. I mean, how do they know? Why would you want to do that?
Because I love looking at your beautiful face.
Well, so you download it, since it's all streaming, it doesn't matter anymore. If you could get a streaming version that you could count on.
Yeah, I can't count on it.
One of the interesting things about
fix AT&T for me, please.
Really?
I can't count on it. So
guess what? AT&T is getting fixed. I think next week.
Getting fixed by Verizon.
Okay.
I mean, to your point before, or one of your many points, is it's coming, right? I mean, there's a serious problem with it, which is the only way that we can do this right now is the what's his name? What's this guy? Leo. The Leo Laporte strategy, which is that he's got this huge army of people who will do that work. Right now, we have a huge army of Rob Legess, and he's getting too successful at Rackspace, and so he's like months behind in terms of taking the actual mix that we release and dumping it to a file. So, what we could do if Google would let up on it would be to make the YouTube version. Yeah, I'll talk to TechCrunch. Yeah. Maybe the TechCrunch Ulyala version. In fact, I already asked TechCrunch if they could put in a request for Ulyala to auto-generate an audio-only file. But in the meantime, what's wrong with having a 100 megabyte file instead of a 20 megabyte file, so that you can avoid all this incredible content that's coming across visually by sticking it in your pocket. But
so you can listen to it while you're driving is the point. No,
I just said, I listen to video podcasts just as well as I listen to audio ones. I don't listen to podcasts anymore. I listen to streaming files because it's easier, and I don't have to be an IT specialist like John Taschek, who's busy trying to milk his RAID array back into health. Storage is bullshit. It's an old architecture. So that's the reason why it's not that we don't want to do it. Nobody's stepping up and doing
it. Understood. Well, hopefully via TechCrunch you can.
On the YouTube version, there's a button which they've kindly enabled, which says download. Anybody who's listening to the show who wants to have this, we'll give them the keys to whatever the iTunes, store is to post it. Somebody do it. If it's that important. I know you haven't got the time, but does somebody? Merry Christmas. All right. So John Taschek, last thoughts.
Last thoughts are, we talked about a lot of entertainment and TV, and I totally agree on those concepts. As far as the contracts, it's the cartel. Maybe they sign the contracts and it's only 10x, but then they start pushing the length of how immediate shows are released. Those things they can always happen. But I will tell you that I am excited about seeing a whole new batch of tablets, because I think that that does take over some of the niche markets that might be out there. Even if we don't know if they exist yet, it could be medical, it could be whatever it is. But I think it also drives Apple and keeps them competitive. And then you see the real innovation that comes out, because they're pushing the most innovative company in that space to be even more innovative. And better design. So I really like to see those things come out.
And as we've said, the tablets are the social media platform. So there's nothing more aggressively innovative than social media and tablets. So each accelerates the other, as you say. The Android stuff accelerates Apple, and Apple accelerates the Android stuff. As long as there's two, we got a horse race.
Yep.
All right. I want to thank Rackspace and particularly Rob Legess for supporting this show and allowing it to come back to the air after a series of unfortunate circumstances. I want to thank NewTek and their incredible TriCaster. I saw a tweet from somebody that Leo was showing the new TriCaster. I think it was probably Philip Nelson was showing it. 8 inputs, $25,000. HD, sounds good. And I want to thank everybody who showed up. John Taschek, John Borthwick, Robert Scoble. This is where my wife, I'll hear about this later, and Kevin Marks, and especially those who didn't. See you again next time. Bye-bye.
I guess Kevin didn't get to wrap up.
Well.